lack of discipline.
This memorable line comes out of a South Park episode from 2005 that got banned from TV for a year. Catholics in America and Australia wrote letters to get the episode permanently banned. Catholics in New Zealand went a step further. They boycotted the advertisers of CanWest, the company that owned the TV station that broadcast South Park in New Zealand. CanWest went bankrupt in 2008, but it wasn't due to the boycott. There was a huge global recession. I was too young to care about the controversy when it erupted back in 2005, but when I finally watched the episode a couple of years later, I felt very guilty when I laughed. I rewatched it again for this exact video, and I still laugh. Pray for me, because I am definitely going to hell. As some of you may have already guessed, this controversial episode is Season 9's Bloody Mary. It's about hangovers and the mother of Jesus. But we're not going to focus too much on the religious controversy. South Park has a billion of those. What we will focus on is the slightly smaller controversy surrounding this episode, its portrayal of alcoholism. Matt and Trey have gotten called naive know-it-alls for what they did in Bloody Mary. Now, I don't disagree with this assessment because I do believe all the noise surrounding it covered up the message. So what on earth did Matt and Trey do to piss off so many Catholics and alcoholics at the same time? Let's go ahead and dive right into it. Bloody Mary opens with Randy driving the boys home from karate practice. He's drunk and he's drinking more. Stan mentions that Randy shouldn't drink and drive. But Stan is wrong. Randy sets him straight.
I'm not drinking and driving, I'm driving while I'm drinking, right boys?
But a cop does what they do best. He ruins this wholesome father-son bonding moment by pulling them over.
Everybody just stay calm. I can handle this, no problem. I know how to deal.
Randy handles it perfectly.
What seems to be the officer problem?
The officer administers a sobriety test.
Just bring one hand to your nose like this.
Randy tries and tries and tries to touch his finger to his nose. He goes around in circles over and over again until his pants fall down. And for no reason at all, he gets arrested. Trey Parker says this scene was inspired by his own father's arrest for drunk driving when he was 9.
You know, Stan, I'd say that your dad lacks a discipline.
Stan begs his friends not to mention the embarrassing incident.
Look, guys, about last night. Can you just keep quiet about it?
Cool. But then the judge orders Randy to go around talking to school kids about the dangers of drunk driving as a part of his community service. This is so humiliating for Stan. It's even made worse by Mrs. Garrison.
If you don't make the right choices in life, you could end up being a big loser like Stan's dad.
That's bad enough, but the second part of Randy's punishment is where the alcoholics start their beef with South Park. Randy goes to an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting under court order.
Hello again, everyone. My name is Michael, and I'm an alcoholic.
But Randy is not willing to admit that he's an alcoholic.
My name's Randy, and I just really like beer.
The guys try to push him.
You have to admit you're an alcoholic.
But Randy is stubborn as always.
But I don't know if I'm really an alcoholic.
This is just absolutely classic Randy, always in denial. This is a man responsible for my favorite excuse the entire world.
I'm not having a glass of wine. I'm having 6. It's called a tasting and it's classy.
The alcoholics try to get Randy to admit that he has a problem.
Step 1 is admitting that you are powerless to control your drinking.
Now there's a little back and forth over the religious aspects of the 12-step program.
It's not religious. You just have to admit that there is some kind of God which has power over you and turn your life over to that God and ask him for forgiveness. That's the 12-step program, not religion.
This is the first attack on religion in this episode, and it's going to get much worse, trust me. But Randy is satisfied with the explanation. He doesn't acknowledge that he has a drinking problem, though.
Look, I really just need to cut down on my drinking and never drive the car drunk again.
You sweet summer child.
You can't just cut down on your drinking, Randy. You need to know something. You have a disease.
A light bulb turns on in Randy's head. He had never thought of his addiction like that. The moderator goes on to explain further.
Alcoholism is a disease. You're very, very sick. You can't cure it yourself. And it's deadly.
Randy takes this and runs with it. He has a disease, which, in his mind, gives him an excuse to drink even more.
I thought I could just quit drinking on my own, but it's an illness, son. I have to admit that I'm powerless to this terrible disease.
Randy cries about it, shaves off his hair, and puts himself in a wheelchair. And he drinks a lot. This is obviously an exaggeration for comedic effect, but some people just weren't laughing. Now, South Park's criticism of the religious aspects of AA is nothing new. Lots of people have done it before. Agnostics and atheists have a big problem with AA's insistence that you must surrender to a higher power.
I do not know this God.
This criticism has its merits, but does it really discredit AA? South Park thinks it does. In a lot of AA forums I visited while researching this video, the opinions across the board were pretty split. Lots of recovering alcoholics think AA is the greatest thing on God's green earth, but there is a significant minority who thinks it's all just a bunch of pseudo-religious nonsense. So, who's right? This is just my very unlearned opinion, and I say that with extreme emphasis. But I believe these people's views on whether AA is good or bad aren't based on effectiveness or data. They all depend on an individual's religious beliefs. According to Gallup, 47% of Americans are religious, and 18% are not. They are all united in hating the 33% who say they are not religious, but are spiritual. If you are part of the 18% that doesn't believe in any religion, surrendering to a higher power becomes impossible, which means AA might not be the best fit for you. If you're in the religiously confused 33%, it's a toss-up. But if you're the religious 47%, then no sweat. AA will almost certainly work for you because it's pretty much designed that way. The organization was founded by 2 devout Christians, and countless studies back this up. Religious people tend to be happier, which leads to fewer addictions because addictions tend to be coping mechanisms. You can cope by praying and doing religious stuff, or you can drown your sorrows in alcohol. Religious people tend to choose the first option, and it works for them. 92% of Americans who attend church at least once a week report being satisfied with their lives. Religious people also report lower levels of depression and other mental illnesses. This is because religious people have one thing that many heathens don't have: certainty. A guy who regularly goes to church, the mosque, or the synagogue doesn't get depressed worrying about the purpose of life. As far as he is concerned, the purpose of living is to go up to heaven. Whether he is right or wrong is absolutely irrelevant. What matters is that he believes it and he lives his life that way. So if you tell this guy to put his faith in God and ask for his help to stop drinking, he just does it. But tell an atheist the same thing and he's gonna fail, because you first need to make the atheist believe in God. Replacing God with a more generic, higher power doesn't change anything. It's still religious framing. Without that faith in a higher purpose and a higher power, AA's method falls flat. My theory is that the effectiveness of its methods vary with the intensity of your religious beliefs. When you consider that Matt Stone is an atheist and Trey Parker says that he believes in a god but doesn't follow any religion, it's no surprise that South Park comes down hard on AA. They mock AA members for being pathetic and literally call it a cult.
Young man, do you know anything about the 12-step program?
Yeah, and I also know a thing or two about cults. I was the leader of one for a while.
Many former alcoholics who credit AA for their recovery were not happy about this bit, and I can't blame them. To be fair, AA doesn't have a charismatic leader, a hierarchy, or even a harem for the dear leader. The organization doesn't accept any donations, and a local chapter operates independently. Even if you were to stretch the definition far enough to include AA, it would be one hell of a boring cult. But that is not even close to being the biggest controversy in this episode. Randy comes to believe that he needs a miracle to stop his drinking.
I'm afraid the only thing that will cure me is a miracle.
The miracle happens right then and there. A statue of the Virgin Mary at the church in a neighboring town starts bleeding from her rear exit. Sick people from all over flock to the church. They all believe that the blood of the Blessed Virgin will cure them of their diseases. And Randy joins them. He cuts in line ahead of cancer patients, old ladies, and elephantitis sufferers for the very same reason.
Please, officer, you have to understand. I need a miracle way more than these people. I'm an alcoholic.
The cop helps Randy because he has an alcoholic brother.
Excuse me, out of the way, please. Alcoholic coming through.
The Virgin Mary statue sprays blood on his face and Randy is magically cured. He jumps from the wheelchair and tosses his beer.
I'm not going to drink this! It's a miracle!
Then he really celebrates.
Praise Jesus! Praise Mary, the Blessed Virgin Mother! Thank you! Thank you, God!
Randy's hair grows back, he takes to carrying around a Bible, and he becomes one of those insufferable converts.
It's just amazing. I haven't had a drink in 5 days. Praise Christ.
Randy goes to hang out with his AA friends, and South Park packs in a little more mockery.
Boy, this lemonade is great. Who knew how fun being sober could be?
Right.
While they're at the pizza place, Pope Benedict XVI visits the statue and examines it. He discovers that the blood is not coming from the Virgin Mary's rear exit, it's coming from her front exit. And the Pope makes a proclamation.
A chick bleeding out her vagina is no miracle. Chicks bleed out their vaginas all the time.
Christians in general, and Catholics in particular, had problems with how South Park treated the Virgin Mary for obvious reasons. But alcoholics have an even bigger problem with what happens next.
That means I'm not cured. I still have the disease. Bartender, I need a drink!
They all rush to the bar and order as much alcohol as they can. This is where Stan comes to the rescue.
Dad, stop!
He tells Randy that even though the statue wasn't a miracle, Randy managed to stay away from alcohol all on his own. The message resonates with Randy, and he even decides that maybe he can force himself not to drink again. This is when Stan makes a speech that riled up countless recovering alcoholics.
Dad, you like to drink, so have a drink once in a while. Have two.
But the worst is yet to come.
If you devote your whole life to completely avoiding something you like, then that thing still controls your life and you've never learned any discipline at all.
Randy argues that he is the kind of person who needs to have it all or nothing.
I'm just the kind of person who needs to have it all or nothing.
Stan channels his inner karate instructor.
All or nothing is easy, but learning to drink a little bit, responsibly, that's a discipline. Discipline comes from within.
The alcoholics lose it. Even the ones who didn't like AA having a problem with this message. They've called it simplistic, out of touch, and even naive. At first, the alcoholics seem to have a point. Just be disciplined, bro. Is terrible advice no matter how you slice it. Does that make Matt and Trey wrong, though? It seems so, but if you look at this from both perspectives, you might have come to a radically different conclusion. First, let's take a look at it from the alcoholic POV. The American Medical Association recommends a maximum of 2 drinks per day for men and 1 drink a day for women. If you exceed that, you have a problem, and if you regularly consume more than 5 drinks a day for men, you are an alcoholic. But why do people drink? The true answer is that nobody really knows. Addiction is a mental disorder, and we still don't understand the human brain enough to pinpoint the root cause. That's how you end up with some people who are social drinkers who can go for days or even weeks without alcohol, while you have some that they literally can't function without drinking. These people can't just stop because it's very hard to fight your own cravings. Now, I may have experimented with alcohol, but I can't say I'm an expert. Yeah, I've gotten drunk a few times, made a fool of myself, and decided to just stay away before it's too late. I didn't want to risk it because I have a couple alcoholics in my family, so I spoke to a real expert for the next portion. He's a neighbor of mine, so let's just call him Charlie for privacy reasons. Now, Charlie is the biggest drinker I know, but he's still a pretty chill dude. He never gets loud or violent like some others that I know. He just gets real quiet when he's drunk. Charlie wakes up with a hangover, which he cures with a shot of vodka. Then he nurses the bottle of vodka throughout the day to maintain the buzz. Being buzzed is apparently very different from being drunk. Charlie says that he can drive and do everything else normally when he's buzzed. But I'm way too much of a coward to test the difference between buzzed and drunk myself. Let's just take his word for it. In the evening, Charlie goes to the bar and gets drunk for real this time. Then he goes to bed, wakes up with a hangover, and just does it all again. This is a guy in his mid-30s who manages to have a wife, 2 kids, and a fairly successful small business, all while perpetually being half drunk. In his own words, Charlie is literally never sober. To him, being sober is torturous. He says it's like staring at a wall, and I'm not sure if he was trolling me or not, but he says he's done that before. For Charlie, alcohol is a necessity. The idea of going through life without it is too miserable for him to even try to consider. What I find unbelievable is that the claim that he's always buzzed. Now, alcoholics in the audience, how sustainable do you think this is? Real or not, most of the stuff Charlie told me matches with what I found on online forums. As one alcoholic put it, 2 beers is broccoli, 20 beers is chocolate. You can't tell people to just eat broccoli every day and expect them to not crave chocolate. The guy who had 1 or 2 beers regularly and just stops are the very few and also very rare. Addiction is compulsive, and most alcoholics can't override that overwhelming compulsion to just keep drinking. If they could, they wouldn't be alcoholics in the first place. For a lot of alcoholics, it's either all or nothing. So when South Park tells them that they can just summon the discipline to stop whenever they want, it feels like a slap in the face from two guys who have never actually had to deal with alcoholism. But I believe Matt and Trey were trying to do something else that a lot of people missed. Randy stopped drinking when he got sprayed with the Virgin Mary's blood because he believed he had been cured. Then he reverted to drinking when the Pope announced that the bleeding was not a miracle at all. Nothing in real life changed. The only shift that happened was in Randy's mind. One minute he believed he was cured of alcoholism, and in the next, he didn't. If the miracle had never been disproven, Randy probably would have never touched another drink in his life. Now this is a pretty obvious allusion to the placebo and the nocebo effects. You have probably heard of the placebo effect. A patient reports pain and the doctor gives them a fake painkiller. About a third of the time, the fake painkiller works. Real symptoms of diseases disappear just because the patient believes he's taking a real painkiller instead of a sugar pill. We know the placebo effect is real because it has been proven countless times. Every medication has to prove it works better than a placebo before it can even be released to the market. Then there is the opposite of the placebo effect, the nocebo effect. This is where the patient gets real medication, but he doesn't get any better because he believes the medication is ineffective. When you hear people talk about the law of attraction or the power of positive thinking, they're talking about the placebo effect, but just don't tell them that. These people aren't wrong, they're actually right, but, bear with me, it's for the wrong reasons. Positive thinking often leads to positive outcomes, and negative thinking leads to negative outcomes, but it's not magic. Positive thinking is just a mental placebo. Randy's recovery and relapse are a clear demonstration of the placebo and nocebo effects in action. The Virgin Mary's blood had a placebo effect on Randy's addiction. He believed it was a legit miracle and thought he was cured, so he acted like he was. When that miracle was disproven, Randy had the opposite reaction. Even if the blood was a legit miracle, Randy would still relapse because he didn't believe the cure was real. This is Matt and Trey calling religion a placebo. By the same logic, offshoots of religion like Alcoholics Anonymous would also be placebos. Ergo, AA is bullshit, according to South Park. If you're an atheist, it makes perfect sense. We don't really know how to treat alcoholism because we don't really know what causes it. The standard advice is to just avoid your drinking triggers. Replace drinking with a healthy habit, and find a support group because social isolation makes you way more likely to develop addictions like alcoholism. This is what AA does so well. It replaces drinking with religion and it becomes a built-in support group. That's what Randy does. After he's cured, he became very religious and he swaps his drinking buddies for his AA buddies. But if you believe that religion is fake, then AA can't work because you don't believe in God. That is the message of Bloody Mary. AA says, look upon God for salvation. But Matt and Trey say to look within yourself because God isn't real.
Discipline, come from within.
A Reddit atheist would later paraphrase this message in the cringiest way possible. In this moment, I am euphoric. Not because of any phony God's blessing, but because I have been enlightened by my own intelligence. Now, whether you accept this message or not depends entirely on your religious beliefs. So, let me know, where do you stand?